everybody. We're really excited to see such a nice crowd out this morning, even though it's so chilly, a little cold out this morning. My name is Ann Schnell. This is my husband, Paul, and we are from Arizona's Raptor Experience. We are located in Chino Valley, and the main purpose of our organization is education. Okay, so we use birds of prey that are non-releasable, and we travel with them like we're doing this morning to share them with people, give you that opportunity to be up close and personal with the birds, but also to teach you what we can about each of the different species that we have with us today. So we're very excited to be here. Just a tiny bit about our backgrounds. I've been in education for most of my career. I was a college professor in environmental conservation and horticulture back in the state of New York. We've only been here since June, so we're still new to the area. And I started working with birds of prey probably about 20 years ago now. I started as a bander, catching and banding the birds, taking data from them, releasing them again, and then I got into education with birds of prey. And this is my husband, Paul. Do you want to say good morning, Paul, and introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming out. Great crowd.
And Paul has been working with birds of prey for a very long time, 40 years. He got interested in birds of prey when he was very young, when a little boy brought an American kestrel to school and didn't want to give it away, but Paul really wanted that bird, so he paid $1 for it. Yes. And luckily the bird was releasable, so he and his dad took care of it for about a week, and then they were able to release it. And boy, that was the beginning for my husband. He's been hooked on birds of prey ever since. So what we're going to do with you this morning for the time that we have together is spend a little bit of time talking about attracting birds to your yard. Okay, so I want to start by asking you a question. First of all, a couple questions. How many bird watchers do we have in the audience? Do we have lots of bird watchers. We're very happy about that. Now, how many of you actually try to do things already to attract birds to your yard? Very good, very good. I'd like to see that. Well, hopefully we can tell you some new things or even reinforce some of the things that you already know this morning. But we're going to put a little twist on talking about attracting birds to your yard because, of course, our focus is the benefits of attracting raptors, which is not the focus that most people have when they talk about birds. But we're going to talk about birds in general as well. So why would we want to do that? Can I get a couple of examples from our audience here? What are some of the benefits of attracting birds to your yard? Birds in general. Yes?
Rodent control.
Very good. This is a student of ours. We taught a class at the Yavapai College, and we're very happy to have you in our audience this morning. Yes, when you talk about attracting raptors to your yard, certainly they're involved in pest control. They take care of some of those small rodents that can become a problem. But there are many other reasons to attract birds to your yard. Can I get some other examples? Why do you do it? Those of you that do it, why? They look pretty, exactly. They have a lot of aesthetic value. It's wonderful to look out the window and to see many different species of our brightly colored birds coming to your yard. You get to see them up close and personal. You get to learn about them, watch their behaviors. Those kinds of things are very exciting. Any other ideas? Yes. Excellent point. Not only seeing them, but hearing them. This is one of my favorite times of year when you go outside early in the morning and all the birds are starting to sing. And it's because we're getting into breeding season. This is the time of year that they spend a lot of time vocalizing because they're getting into breeding season. So many, many things. And we want to add just a couple of little things to that list, why it's important to attract birds to your yard. Okay, that's another good example. Fertilizer. So besides the aesthetics and besides the opportunity to just see them and listen to them, when we try to attract birds to our yard, typically what we're doing is we are planting things that will attract the birds. So let's think for a minute about some of the benefits of the different plants that we add to our yards. First of all, when you add plants to the soil, their roots hold the soil in place. Okay, we have big problems here with erosion, especially if the soil is not covered with wind and also with water in the monsoon season. So plants help to hold that soil in place so it doesn't go anywhere. The low plants also help to hold the moisture that's in the soil, reduces the evaporation rate. Plants can also add shade to the environment, which adds some cooling effect to your yard, especially in those hot times of year. Okay, so there's a lot of benefits of just simply adding plants to your environment. Okay, but in addition to that, when you think about getting involved with nature, and most importantly, getting children involved in nature, one of the things you can do by attracting plants to your yard is you can actually become what we call a citizen scientist. Has anybody ever heard that term before? Okay, just a couple of you. Well, citizen scientists are people just like you and me. We can easily get involved with places like Cornell Lab of Ornithology and the Audubon Society. They actually have programs that everyday people can get involved in as long as you have access to the internet. And what you do is you assist with backyard bird counts. Okay, and once you get good at identifying the different species, you actually follow a scientific protocol that they put on their websites, and you count birds at certain times of the day for certain periods of time. And you contribute to national databases about what's happening with birds in your area. This is extremely important because there aren't enough scientists around the world to keep track of every different type of wildlife. And so if we can grab citizens that are interested and bring them in and can really bring in a lot of data, that's super important. So Cornell Lab of Ornithology, the Audubon Society, there's actually a website that people can contribute to actually map out the hummingbirds returning after the winter. And you can actually watch on the map places where people are reporting their hummingbirds coming through. So a lot of really amazing things that you can do once you start attracting birds to your landscape. So a couple of things that I want to say before we get into talking more specifics. One of those is that when you start to acquire plants for your yard, I'd like you to consider a couple of things. First of all, it's really good to try to use native species. Okay, and I know that they have native species of plants here at Waters because I've noticed many of them as I've been walking around looking at the inventory here. Native plants are those that are going to more easily thrive. They're going to deal with the heat a little better once they're established, and they also tend to be drought tolerant. So water is one of those things that can be a particular problem in this area. So we do want to make sure that you get something that's drought tolerant as well. So when we talk about attracting birds, we're talking about providing habitat for them. When you look at wildlife, basically got 4 components of habitat that you need to consider. One of them is space. Well, we're doing that by allowing birds to come into our backyard, other animals to come into our backyard, planting for them, we're providing space. So that one we kind of have covered. The other 3 are really important: food, cover, and water. Okay? These are the components that you need to have in your yard in order to attract birds. So I want to talk very briefly about one of those first components, and then we're going to get out the first bird, which I know is what you're probably waiting for. So just to briefly talk about food, there are a whole variety of ways that you can provide food for wild birds. Certainly you can put up your own bird feeder. Okay, you can put up hummingbird feeders. We've got a couple of examples of hummingbird feeders that are sold here at Waters. I think everybody probably knows that anything that has red in it will attract those little hummingbirds to your yard, and they're so much fun to watch. So many species here in Arizona. But plants can also be planted specifically to provide food sources. So if you think about it, we've got those plants that provide nectar. Okay, so if you look around you here in the greenhouse, there's lots of examples of flowering plants right now that are very, very beneficial to those birds that need nectar, like the hummingbird. But that will also attract things like butterflies and other insects as well. Your pollinators that are extremely important for our food plants and also for other plants will be attracted by those things that produce nectar. In addition to those nectar-producing plants, I like the snapdragons that are over here. The hummingbirds actually really like the snapdragons, and so do butterflies. There's also the million bells, sometimes called super bells. Those are back there. Those are fantastic for hummingbirds. They really like those, and butterflies like those as well. Okay. In addition to that, you can also put in berry-producing plants. Okay, there's several varieties of hollies here at Waters that are berry-producing, that are very beneficial for birds that eat berries. There's fruit trees. Those fruit trees are going to provide not only flowers that provide nectar and pollen as well for insects and birds that rely on those things, but of course the fruit, sometimes we got to share the fruit with the birds. They usually get to it before we do. So you also have the fruit producers. You can plant things that provide seeds as well. So many people like sunflowers. Okay, it's a great example of a plant that you can put in your yard and will eventually produce seeds that will be available for those birds. So there's many, many different types of plants that you can use to provide that one component of habitat that's absolutely necessary for species, and that is food.